I still remember the day it all happened, as vividly as if it were yesterday. My hands trembled even now as I recount it. I'm Kira, a popular influencer known for my beauty tips and lifestyle vlogs. That day, I hosted a fan meetup at a cozy little cafe in my hometown. Fans crowded around me, eager to take selfies and ask for advice. I felt loved. Then I saw him, Gil. He stood out immediately, disheveled hair, sunken eyes, and a weird crooked smile. He waited until the crowd thinned before approaching me.
Kira, you look even more beautiful in person.
His voice was raspy, and his gaze intense. I forced a smile and nodded, hoping he would take the hint and move along, but he didn't.
Do you remember me? We used to be close.
I'm sorry. I don't think we've met before.
His eyes darkened, and he leaned in closer, whispering,
You don't remember your own husband?
I think you have me confused with someone else.
He laughed. Even the fans around seemed repelled.
No, honey. Enough with the jokes. See, you don't know this yet, but you're my wife.
He seemed completely lost in the head.
Please, leave me alone.
Gil's demeanor shifted from creepy to menacing in an instant. I signaled the cafe staff and they quickly intervened, escorting him out. He resisted, shouting obscenities and threats until he was finally thrown out. The room fell silent, and I tried to shake off the encounter, but an uneasy feeling lingered. Minutes later, just as I was beginning to relax, the door burst open. Gil stormed back in, this time wielding 2 guns. Panic erupted. Screams filled the air as he opened fire, bullets spraying indiscriminately. I froze in terror. The cafe turned into a scene from a nightmare. People fell, blood pooling around them. I ducked behind a table, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst from my chest. Gil's eyes were wild, his mouth twisted in a crazy grin.
You can't hide from me, Kira!
His voice cut through the chaos. I tried to stay low, crawling towards the back exit. A bullet whizzed past my ear, embedding itself in the wall. I felt a sharp pain in my side and looked down to see blood seeping through my shirt. I had been hit. I bit back a scream, adrenaline the only thing keeping me moving. I reached the kitchen, hoping to find a way out. But Gil was relentless. He kicked open the door and his eyes locked onto mine.
There you are, my love.
He raised the gun, and I thought it was the end. Suddenly, a loud crash diverted his attention. A brave stranger tackled him. The patron, a burly man with a determined look, slammed Gil against the stainless steel counter. The gun clattered to the floor. Gil snarled and swung a wild punch, connecting with the man's jaw. The patron staggered but didn't fall. He grabbed a frying pan from the stove and swung it with all his might, striking Gil's shoulder. Gil let out a feral scream, his eyes blazing with madness. He lunged, grabbing a butcher's knife from the counter. The patron blocked with his arm, the blade slicing through his shirt but only grazing the skin. Blood stained the fabric as the two grappled, their movements desperate and brutal. I remembered that Gil's hand found a pot of boiling water, and he hurled it at the man. Steam hissed, and the man howled in pain as the scalding liquid splashed across his face and chest. Despite the agony, he didn't back down. He kicked out, catching Gil in the knee, causing him to stumble. Seizing the opportunity, the man delivered a powerful punch, sending Gil crashing into a stack of pans. Gil went for the gun, and so did the man. They rolled, punching and kicking, each fighting for control. Gil's hand found a broken glass bottle, and he slashed at the man's arm, drawing blood. Panting, bloodied, and burned, the man stood over Gil, his heaving with exhaustion and pain. The kitchen was a wreck, pots, pans, and utensils strewn everywhere, the acrid smell of burnt food hanging in the air. But that's when Gil grabbed the gun and shot it at the man. The stranger fell down, and I screamed in horror. I finally got out of the shock and managed to get up and head for the back door before Gil could focus on me again. Outside, the sound of sirens filled the air. The police had arrived. I collapsed on the pavement, the world spinning around me. The officers stormed the cafe, and seconds after a few seconds of gunfire, it all became silent. They got to my psycho stalker, but I decided to get off of Insta and live, a life devoid of attention in that moment. I had always been drawn to the paranormal, the unexplained. As a YouTuber specializing in paranormal adventures, my channel had gained quite a following. My latest adventure brought me to the outskirts of my hometown, infamous for the ghost sighting of the Virgin Bride, a young woman from the 1800s who died mysteriously on her wedding night. Legend had it that she roamed the woods, forever searching for her lost groom. I wanted to document my experience and see if the stories were true. I set off with my trusty dog Max by my side, vlogging the entire journey. The sun hung low in the sky as we entered the dense forest. The air had the faint smell of pine.
All right, guys. We're about to enter the woods where the Virgin Bride has been sighted 2 days ago. This rancher from my town was passing through the shortcut when he says that he saw her. I've got Max with me, and we're camping out here tonight. Wish us luck.
We hiked for hours until we found a clearing to set up camp. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the forest grew eerily quiet. I pitched the tent and started a small fire, trying to shake off the growing sense of unease.
It's getting dark, and the woods are definitely creepy. But we're here to find out if the legend is true. I've got my camera, my flashlight, and Max. Let's see what happens.
Suddenly, after a few hours, a distant, mournful cry pierced the stillness. Max's ears perked up and he let out a low growl.
Did you guys hear that? It sounded like crying. Okay, this is getting weird.
I grabbed my flashlight and panned it around the campsite. The crying continued, closer this time, mixed with what sounded like soft whispering. My heart pounded in my chest, but I forced myself to stay calm for the sake of the video.
All right, we're hearing some really strange noises. I kind of wish I wasn't alone.
Max's growl turned into a bark. He stared intently at a point just beyond the fire's light. I followed his gaze, but saw nothing. Still, the sense of being watched was overwhelming.
Max, what is it? Do you see something?
I stood up, the camera shaking in my hand as I moved closer to where Max was focused. The air grew colder around there. The crying and whistling grew louder, surrounding us.
Okay, guys, this is getting really intense.
A sudden gust of wind extinguished the fire, plunging us into darkness. I fumbled for my flashlight, the beam flickering before going out completely. Max whimpered, pressing against my leg.
Stay close, Max. We need to get out of here.
As I turned to head back to the tent, a figure in a white dress appeared in the corner of my eye. I froze, the hair on the back of my neck standing on end. The figure was faint, almost translucent, and drifted towards us. I felt a sharp pain in my side, as if something had clawed me. I cried out, dropping the camera.
Shit! Run, Max, run!
I grabbed Max's leash and ran, stumbling through the underbrush. The figure followed, gliding effortlessly over the rough terrain. The crying turned into a wail, and the whistling became a deafening shriek. I tripped over a root, falling hard and scraping my knee. Blood trickled down my leg, but I forced myself to get up. We burst through the trees and into the open, the forest edge in sight. I dared a glance back and saw the figure standing at the tree line, her face obscured by a veil. Her hand reached out, but she couldn't cross the boundary. Panting, I collapsed on the ground, clutching Max. The night was silent again, the oppressive feeling lifting. I realized my camera was still running, capturing our escape.
We made it! We actually made it! I don't know what that was, but it's real. Holy fuck! The Virgin Bride is real! Guys, I hope it came on camera.
I looked down at Max, who licked my face, his tail wagging. We had survived, but the haunting presence of the Virgin Bride would stay with me forever. I ended the recording, vowing never to return to those woods again. But I was in for a rude shock when I processed the video the next day. Whenever the camera was on me, the picture quality was fine. But whenever I turned it towards the ghost of the bride, the camera quality became grainy. Yet, the figure was there, captured, translucent, crying, haunting. I don't know what all history this place had, but now I know that ghosts are real. Being an Instagram influencer has its perks. Free products, exclusive events, and a massive following. But it also has its downsides. And lately, those were getting harder to ignore. It all started with a message from an account with no profile picture and a single follower. "You look good in the blue nightgown last night." I stared at the message, my heart pounding. I hadn't posted any photos of myself in my nightwear, and I lived alone. I tried to brush it off as a lucky guess or a prank, but the unease settled deep in my gut.
Who is this? How do you know what I wore?
There was no immediate response. I tried to go about my day, but I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The messages kept coming from different accounts, each one more unsettling than the last. "Remember the red dress you wore on your first date with Ryan?" My blood ran cold. Ryan was a guy I had dated briefly before things got weird, and I ended it. I hadn't thought about him in years. How did this person know?
Leave me alone!
That night, I couldn't sleep. Every creak of the house made me jump. Around midnight, I received another message. "You can't ignore me forever." I threw my phone across the room, my hand shaking. Enough was enough. I blocked the account again and decided to put my phone on silent. A heavy silence filled the house as I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling. I finally drifted off, only to be jolted awake by the sound of footsteps. I sat up, straining to hear. The footsteps were slow, deliberate, coming from the hallway outside my bedroom.
Who's there?
No response. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, the beam cutting through the darkness. The footsteps continued, moving closer. My heart pounded in my chest as I got out of bed, the floor cold under my feet. I crept to the door and opened it, shining the light down the hall. It was empty. The air grew colder with each step. I was sure that someone or something was there.
I'm calling 911.
Suddenly, a shadow darted across the hall. I screamed, dropping my phone. It clattered to the floor, and the flashlight spinning wildly. I grabbed it and backed into my room, slamming the door shut and dialed for help.
Hello? 911? Please send someone over. There's someone in my house.
But that is when I heard a hoarse, heavy, manly voice, which had static interruptions. "I am sorry. 911 isn't available right now. Can I call the fake bestie you had called to get away from me on our last date?" I froze. The temperature in the room plummeted. I could see my breath and the hairs on my arms stood on end. The door rattled as if someone was trying to break it down. It couldn't be him. I heard from a friend that Ryan had hung himself a few days after I ditched him. I backed into the corner. The rattling grew louder. A cacophony of scary voices surrounded me. That is when the door burst open and a shadowy figure stood before me. I couldn't make out any features, just a dark silhouette against the light from the hall. The figure moved towards me, slow and deliberate. I tried to scream, but no sound came out. Pain exploded in my side, as if something sharp had slashed me. I looked down, and I saw blood seeping through my shirt. I pressed my hand to the wound, trying to stop the bleeding. I scrambled to my feet and ran for the door, but the figure was there, blocking my way. That is when I realized who he was. Translucent and dark, bloodshot eyes that seemed inhuman, disfigured face. But the scent, I knew instantly that it was Ryan's scent. I turned and ran to the window, throwing it open and climbing out onto the roof. The cold night air hit me like a slap, but I didn't care. I had to get away. I climbed down the trellis, slipping and scraping my hands on the rough wood, and hit the ground hard, pain shooting up my bleeding leg. I limped to the street, not daring to look back. As I reached the sidewalk, I glanced over my shoulder and saw the figure standing in my window, watching me before it vanished right before my eyes. I can't explain it, but I am convinced that it was Ryan's ghost. I didn't stop until I reached my neighbor's house and pounded on the door. They let me in, and I collapsed on the floor, sobbing. They called 911 and police came, but they didn't find anyone in my house. I moved out of that place within a week. I just hope that Ryan is somehow finally at peace.